Okay, everybody ready? Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Ask you please stand for the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everyone to tonight's regular town board meeting. And just offer a salute to all our veterans with Veterans Day having been on Saturday. I want to salute our veterans, and our thoughts and prayers are with our men and women serving in uniform and their families, continuing to protect our freedoms and our democracy. We appreciate their contribution. Approval of minutes, October 2nd, October 10th, October 12th, October 18th, and there was a bid opening October 27th. Is there a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the agenda this evening? Okay, hearing no one. The first item on the agenda, we have the resolution on adoption of the 2018 town budget. But before we do that, we had the preliminary budget, held a public hearing on last Monday, and we had just received a notice from the village for the increase in hydrant rental. So I just want to propose this change to the preliminary budget before we adopt the budget. Due to increase in the hydrant district, we need increased tax levy for 2018. Total 2018 tax levy needs to be, for the hydrant district for next year, $90,000. So what we would do is set the expense at $90,000, and we will have to levy $85,000 for taxes and use $5,000 from unappropriated funds. To offset the increase in the hydrant district and in the tax levy, the planning board revenue will be increased by $6,000 from $20,000 to $26,000. We've had more activity in the past few months, so we're hoping 2018 is a more active period for the planning board. So the net levy would be the same, and the tax cap would remain. We would be under the tax cap still by the $1,603. Is there a motion to approve the change in the preliminary budget?
So moved.
Second.
Move second. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes. Motion is carried. For the resolution on the adoption of the 2018 town budget, whereas heretofore the town of Cornwall provided a preliminary 2018 town budget and scheduled public hearings for town board members and interested citizens to review, and whereas after the town board reviewed all the comments and suggestions and made necessary changes, the town board is now ready to present the final 2018 budget. Therefore, be resolved as follows. The town board does hereby adopt the 2018 budget presented at this meeting. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is directed to prepare 2 certified copies of the budget for the supervisor to present to the county in order for the county to levy the town taxes and other charges contained in the town budget. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Move second. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. On the assessing revaluation, we discussed at our work session last week. Carrie and I met with the state representative and the assessor, reviewing the actually the equalization rate. We're at 100% equalization now as a result of the revaluation, and one of our goals is to try to stay at that level. And the state conducted a review of sales that have occurred since the reval started, and I think that was through January or July 1st of 2016. So they looked at the sales since that time and have basically come to the conclusion that for next year we will still remain at 100% for the equalization rate. And in further discussion, it was suggested by the state that if the assessor wants to just conduct an internal review on an informal basis, just reviewing the numbers and the sales for his own information, that would have no impact on the assessment role as far as the revaluation goes going forward. So we had gotten an estimate from Tyler to, if we had to spend money to really do a mini reval, I guess they call it. And I think based on the information that the state has provided us with, where there's been very little change in the sales over the past year, that at this point in time, that we don't see any need to spend that money. That does not preclude us a year from now, when we take a look at it, and we'll ask the state to do the same review, that if we deem then necessary to do more of an internal review with a mini reval, then we can, if we have to, retain some outside services to assist the assessor with that. So at this point, Kerry's going to add anything to that? I think it's status quo.
I'm sure going forward, a lot will depend on the number of sales that we will see over a period of time, as well as
Yeah.
values.
So, any questions? Okay, so we'll note that, and we'll again be revisiting that next year. This does not preclude, the board had talked about inviting the county director of real property to come in and talk to the board about the county program, and we will do that going forward. There's no reason that we shouldn't at least have Mr. Carey come in and just discuss with the board the program that they have at the county level. I have a letter from the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. It says the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation would like to acquire approximately 46.46 acres of land as an addition to Scunnamunk Mountain State Park. The parcel is tax map 37-1-9.2 and is currently owned by the Orange County Land Trust. The acquisition of this property would help Recreation and Parks establish a wildlife corridor between the western Hudson Highlands and Scunnamunk Mountain State Park. Property is critical for a trail connection between Scunnamunk Mountain and Black Rock Forest. New York's open space plan recommends that Office of Parks and Recreation seek local government concurrence whenever the Environmental Protection Fund is used to fund acquisition. If you have any questions, let us know. Sandra Burnell, Real Estate Specialist. And this is a 46-acre parcel up off of Mineral Springs Road. So it's now, as I said, indicated, the Orange County Land Trust owns the property, and the park's going to acquire it. So I think that just a motion to indicate to State Parks that we concur with their proposed acquisition. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Move second, roll call.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Okay, we have a request for the menorah to be placed again this year in the use of Munger Cottage. I'll read the resolution. Whereas the town board of the town of Cornwall has received a request from Rabbi Zerabransky of Shabbat of Eastern Orange County under the auspices of the Shabbat of the Mid-Hudson Valley to place a 6-foot to 8-foot menorah on Town Hall Park grounds for the Festival of Hanukkah. And whereas Rabbi Zerabransky is further requesting the use of Munger Cottage on Sunday, December 12, 2017 at 6 o'clock p.m. for a Hanukkah celebration for the community, whereas the town board has considered the request from the rabbi, now therefore be resolved as follows. The town board hereby grants the request of Rabbi Shabransky of the Shabbat of Eastern Orange County to place a 6 to 8-foot menorah on Town Hall Park grounds. Specific location be approved by the town supervisor or superintendent of buildings and grounds for a period of time between December 1st, 2017 and January 2nd, 2018, subject to the following. 1, a statement of the date the display will be erected and the day it will be removed. 2, an execute a hold harmless agreement waiver. And 3, proof that Shabbat of Eastern Orange County has liability insurance covering its activities in erecting the proposed display and naming the town of Cornwall as an additional insured. And be it further resolved that the town board hereby grants the request of Shabbat of Eastern Orange County to use Munger Cottage on Sunday, December 12, 2017 at 6 o'clock p.m. for Hanukkah celebration for the community. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Moved, second, discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. I have a letter from the Lions Club requesting permission from the Cornwall Lions Club to conduct our wreath and roping sales on Town Hall property as we did last year, selling wreaths and roping for a total of 4 weekends, last weekend in November and the first 3 weekends in December. As you know, the Cornwall Lions Club is very active in our community, in keeping with our motto, "We serve." We also donate a substantial amount of money to charities and organizations. Of course, in order to give away money, we must first make it. The selling of the wreaths at Christmas time is only one of several fundraisers that we conduct annually. By changing our venue for selling wreaths from Main Street to the Town Hall parking lot last year, we were much more successful with our sales. Hopefully, we'll be even more financially successful with our endeavor this year. I appreciate you bringing this request before the town board at November meeting. We're granted permission for selling wreaths. Lions Club will provide a certificate of insurance, naming the town as additional insured, and keep the area clean of any debris. Signed by Philip Cameron. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a
Second.
second? Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. I have a letter from the Village of Cornwall and Hudson. Enclosed, please find a certified copy of a resolution unanimously adopted by the Village Board of Trustees on October 16, 2017. The Village of Cornwall and Hudson is requesting a tax exemption from real property taxes on village-owned supply property for the year 2019. If I can be further assistance, please let me know. Jeannie Mahoney, Village Clerk. It's an annual request that the village makes. I have a resolution. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Cornwall, the town has received a request from the Village Board, the Village of Cornwall and Hudson, to grant tax exemption from 2019 town taxes to certain properties owned by the village and the town outside of the incorporated village. Whereas the town has considered the request from the village, and therefore be resolved as follows, that the town does hereby adopt this resolution denying the request of the village to exempt certain properties in the town outside the village, which said properties are used by the village for water supply purposes. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. I received a letter from the Orange County Transportation Council. New York State Department of Transportation, in coordination with Orange County Transportation Council, is pleased to announce a local call for pedestrian safety projects in support of the state's pedestrian safety action plan. I believe that the state is making available $40 million in federal highway safety improvement program funding to local municipalities to improve local roads. This is a 100% funding with no local match. I think the important thing with this, it comes at an opportune time. The towns or Economic Development Committee has been working on Main Street plan to try to enhance pedestrian use of Main Street and activity. And we have some concerns, not only on Main Street, but certainly on Willow Avenue for some of the pedestrian crosswalks. I spoke with the county, and I believe the county is going to try to coordinate municipalities' request because it's a minimum of $250,000. And so what we'll do is work closely with Orange County to put together what we feel would be the needs to really address and enhance pedestrian safety on these roads, and see if that can be included in a county application for the funding. But as I said, it comes at a great time because we are looking at plans for Main Street and all, and one of the ideas is to try to make it safer for vehicles to move through at a reasonable speed, but also to just provide safe places and enhance just the safety for pedestrians using it. And I've always had a concern about the crosswalks on Willow Avenue, with the Willow Avenue School being there and also the middle school, Lee Road. There's a lot of children that do use those roads, and I'd like to see just an increased visibility for the crosswalks. So this would be an ideal situation. And the other benefit that we have at this point for these roads, they're county-owned roads. So I'm hoping that the county will embrace our ideas, since they are their roads, and work with us in trying to improve pedestrian safety. So I'll keep the board informed on that as we go forward with it. And hopefully we can get some specifics put together for the county. Chief Hazard has put in a request just to designate No Shave November for the police department. The chief is looking to suspend the general order that requires officers to be clean shaven for the month of November. Officers who elect to participate were required to make a monetary donation of $20 to American Cancer Society. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Move, second discussion, roll call.
I'm assistant.
Oh, Michael,
I'm assistant.
you're in. Did you put your $20 in?
I'm going to put my...
You never shave.
As long as he puts the 20 in, I don't
Does he
care.
put the 20 in?
Yeah, put the 20 in.
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. McGinnis? Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
yes. Okay, dog control services. We've been contracting with the town of Woodbury for their shelter on dogs that we pick up in Cornwall and that have to be held. And we have another proposal that the board has reviewed from the Humane Society of Walden. It's at a greatly reduced cost overall for the service. Basically, there's an annual fee of $550 plus $100 per each dog delivered and accepted by the shelter. This is much different than the arrangement with Woodbury. It's a little further going out to Walden, but it will save money. And not only, I mean, saving money is one thing, but also for the residents whose dogs get picked up and then they redeem them, this hopefully will hold down the cost of what they'll have to pay the town to redeem the dog. So the only other change that we'll make is make some arrangement. Our police department is responsible overall for the dog control, for picking up the dogs, but to minimize the police officer from having to travel to Walden, work out an arrangement with the Buildings and Grounds to provide that service of taking the dogs to Walden and not having our police officers have to leave the town unless there's no other means of doing it. So I'd like to just have a motion. I'll read the resolution. Whereas the town board has before it a proposed agreement between the Humane Society of Walden, HSW, and the town of Cornwall for provision of dog control services. Whereas the town board finds the terms and provisions of the proposed agreement to be acceptable, now therefore be resolved as follows. 1, the town board hereby approves the 2018 dog control agreement with HSW, copy of which is attached. And 2, the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign the 2018 dog control agreement and all documents necessary to implement its terms and provisions. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt? Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion's carried.
Are
Do
gonna-
you want to notify
Do you want me to do it? or do
Woodbury?
you want- Oh, okay.
Either, because they've
I'll
been
write them a
communicating
letter.
with
Yeah,
you.
I'll write them a letter.
Through the-
I'll
okay.
CC you.
Okay, let's see, local highway inventory. This is just to add a couple of roads in a new subdivision. Whereas the town of Cornwall Highway Superintendent is in the process of submitting the New York State Department of Transportation DOT annual certification of local highway mileage for 2017. Whereas at the time, the town of Cornwall accepted certain roads in Winding Brook subdivision in the town, the extensions of Ardmore Street and Jackie Street to Winding Brook Court were not included in the dedications. And whereas the DOT has requested that the extensions of Ardmore Street and Jackie Street from the original dead ends to Winding Brook Court be formally accepted by the town and included in the town's highway inventory, and therefore be resolved as follows. 1, the town of Cornwall agrees to formally accept the above extensions of Ardmore Street and Jackie Street to Winding Brook Court as town highways. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes. I just want to mention that it's important that we provide this information state. We do get a little bit of money for them based on mileage of town roads. So it's all, every little bit helps. Next is on the re-levy of water for the village of Cornwall and Hudson and First Cliff Heights Water District. Whereas the town board has been presented with a list of unpaid water charges in the amount of $150,305.57. 1, owed by properties outside of the village of Cornwall and Hudson receiving water from the village of Cornwall and Hudson, and 2, owed by properties in the First Cliff Heights Water District. And whereas it has been requested that the town board adopt a resolution forwarding the list of property owners together with the unpaid charges to the County of Orange, requesting the same be re-levied on the 2018 general tax bill It being understood that when the town of Cornwall receives the taxes, including the unpaid water charges, that the town will then remit the unpaid water charges to the appropriate entity. Therefore, be it resolved as follows, that after due consideration of the above request, the town board does hereby adopt this resolution agreeing to forward the list of unpaid water charges listed by property owner to the County of Orange, together with the request that the aforesaid unpaid water charge in the amount of $150,305.57 be re-levied against the list of properties that the same appear on the 2018 general tax bill. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Move second, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. For December, the farmers market will be held on Saturday, December 9th, from 10:30 to 1:30, and it's going to be at Munger Cottage in the community room. Actually, we're hoping to use all of Munger Cottage. What we want to do is, we're calling it the Cornwall Community Holiday Farmers Market. And in addition to the farmers market, we want to attract some local vendors and crafts and sort of make it a holiday shopping opportunity for the community. So we're looking forward to this. It'll be the first time we've tried to really have something really expanded, but I think it may fit well for the upcoming holidays. So I just want to note that for the record, and we hope that we get a good turnout of vendors. And
What is the date?
the 9th, December 9th.
You skipped number 12.
Yeah.
Pardon?
You skipped 12.
Oh, did I skip 12?
I'm so anxious about the
Oh, the water,
holidays.
oh, I'm sorry. I pulled that in. I did show. Well, I know what threw me off. There's water in 11 and there's water in 12. All right, so I did number 13, so we're good with that. Now, the Beaver Dam Lake Water Corporation Performance Bond. This is the New York American Water, Beaver Dam Lake Water Corporation. It's a private water system in Beaver Dam that they're actually installing some new water mains. A lot of the water mains go through private property in Beaver Dam, and they want to relocate those lines into the town's right of way. So I have a resolution, whereas New York American Water and Beaver Dam Lake Water Corporation have proposed to complete public improvements to the corporation's water lines, and whereas the town's consulting engineers have estimated performance security in the amount of $55,202.45, whereas the town's consulting engineers have determined that an escrow be established for review of work within the town's right-of-way in the amount of $10,750. Whereas the town code currently requires performance security in the form of a letter of credit or cash deposit, now therefore be resolved as follows. The town board of Town of Cornwall agrees to accept the performance security in the amount of $55,202.45, following review and approval by the town attorney. Town board further accepts the escrow deposit in the amount of $10,750 and directs that an escrow account be established by the town's bookkeeper. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Move, second, discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. And let me again emphasize, December 9th, the holiday farmers market. See if we can get a good turnout for that. Okay, on the Sands Ring Cemetery maintenance and upkeep, I have a stipulation of settlement. This is the topic of a trust fund that was set up, I think, around 1932 by the Sands Ring families for maintenance of the Sands Ring Cemetery off of Main Street. And the trust fund is held, I think, by Mellon Bank. And our attorney has been working with the bank and with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office oversees the cemeteries and maintenance and so forth. So we have this agreement. Basically what it means is that the town will be able to access funds on an annual basis for maintenance and upkeep of the cemetery, which is really good. I mean, it's a historic cemetery, and so with this resolution being approved and the stipulation being in agreement by the Attorney General's office, that we will put together a plan for the cemetery to do whatever upgrades, repairs, and improvements are necessary for next year, submit it for approval, to the trustees, and then hopefully be able to have the project done next spring. So whereas the Sands Ring Cemetery Corporation, Bank of New York Mellon, and Town of Cornwall have agreed to enter into a stipulation of settlement with respect to certain funds established in a trust fund for maintenance of the Sands Ring Cemetery, whereas the attorneys for the town have reviewed the proposed stipulation of settlement and recommend the town enter into said agreement attached here too, and therefore be it resolved as follows. Supervisor is authorized to execute the next stipulation of settlement together with such other documents as may be appropriate for this matter. Is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Moved, second by Peter. Discussion?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
How much does the town expend right now on that particular property?
We like with the other cemeteries, you go in, you clean some brush and rake up and clean up any limbs that are down, but as far as repairing stones and fences, that hasn't taken place.
And that whole entryway that goes into it can be cleaned out too, perhaps?
Yeah, actually, the property is going, that's part of, I think what we're gonna include in the plan, Michael, in the spring is, and in this agreement, it's all one parcel and it's all in the agreement, but they refer to the cemetery as the cemetery property and the other as the Sands Ring Park in front of it. So, as part of this plan, we're gonna try to improve and enhance, hopefully with some benches and plantings right in that general area out in front, and a sign that'll go up after how many decades, or not even decades, probably 2 centuries, to really identify the Sands Ring Cemetery back there.
That's great.
So it'll be a great improvement really for, and I think people will access that to go back. It's pretty fascinating.
So the expenses kind of be front-end loaded, right?
Actually, no, I think we'll submit the plan to them, and I think it'll be a quick reimbursement to us.
Right, I mean, bringing you up to speed.
Oh,
First year.
the initial one is gonna be a bigger plan. The rest will be maintenance probably after that, and maybe some improvement.
I just have one question, the life
Sure.
expectancy of the trust, based on current expenses?
Well, since we haven't incurred any expenses other than just the routine, it's hard to say, Peter. Even next year is probably gonna be higher, it is gonna be higher than the annual, so it's hard to say, but it's gonna be several years, you know, so, and I have no idea what the initial, upgrade is gonna be, but we'll know better come spring. But- Okay,
Motion.
do we do we need the motion? We did the motion in a second, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Okay, one of the things that we were hoping to do this year, and I'm still planning to do it, is at the Sands Ring Homestead, the Garden Club has worked, put in many hours and efforts, really restoring the gardens that were back there, and actually just rebuilding the whole, the garden area. And one of the last things that we have to do is to install a new fence. The other one had been there for decades and was deteriorated. So we had Building and Grounds obtained, they contacted 3 fencing companies, and one company didn't get back to them, but we do have Ketchum Fencing that has put in a proposal of $3,380. Now, we were able today, basically over the phone, he got it, and then they emailed it from a protection fence out in Chester. And they gave different options, but their price is $25.95 with a discount and all. But the difference is when we had pictures of the original fencing that went back decades, and the only company of the 2 that really is able to, provide that kind of fencing is Ketchum Fencing. So even though there's a difference in price, but, it's, if we want to keep the colonial and keep it looked aged, the difference in money is what we're really looking at. And the third company was Fesco in Washingtonville. So I'd like to entertain a motion that we approve Ketchum Fencing for $3,380 to install the fencing and 2 gates around the garden at the rear of the Sands Ring Homestead.
So,
Second.
Move second, discussion?
That comes out of the $20,000 annual?
Yeah, they come out of the Sands Ring Fund of the town for the maintenance and upkeep.
question. How has the drainage been working there that we installed?
The drainage has been good. It's really, and even, all the work that was done, I think there's minimal water that really has gotten into to the basement area. So everything seems to be, I think, greatly improved, truthfully. And I think next year, I think through one of the things we'll do, we'll be doing some more plantings around the building. I think the Friends have some plans for rose bushes and some other landscaping that sort of ties into that period of time.
And then that basement area you referred to is essentially a coal chute, it's not like a full-size basement.
Oh, yeah, it's a very,
Only under
it's
part of the-
it's a small,
It's
it's a small area.
Small area.
Yeah, and so that was all when they reinforced the floor beams and all that. That area was cleaned up really well. Okay, roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, and I do want to thank the Garden Club. I mean, they have put in a lot of hours, and the building and grounds and the highway department helped with getting gravel down and material in, and really should take a walk back there and look and see. But wait until the fence is up, which could be a month from now, but
It'll be under snow.
yeah, it'll be under snow, but the plants will be preserved. Okay, under appointments, I have a letter from Mary Elizabeth Pearsall requesting to be appointed to the Conservation Advisory Council. Background, in the past 13 years, is focused on community development and growth, strong in communication, extremely effective team organizational skills. So is there a motion to appoint Mary Pearsall?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. I have a memo from Recreation, Karen Badesky, approve the following 2017-18 boys basketball season refereeing, bookkeeping, et cetera, at $10 per hour. Mike Anderson, Kayla Fisher, Ken Fisher, James Moore, Tyler Rickey, and Joseph Sardon. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Move second, discussion, roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Next, I have a memo from the Highway Superintendent requesting authorization to transfer John Frober from sanitation laborer to highway laborer chauffeur. Rate of pay will be $22.21 per hour per union contract at step one. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. And I request from the town clerk to, she's interviewed for a part-time position in her office for clerical, and she's requesting the board appoint Jennifer McCormick at a rate of pay of $14 per hour. She's available to start on Tuesday, November 14th. Very much appreciate the board's approval of this appointment. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Committee reports. Councilwoman Buck?
So I'll do the building inspector's report. Permits issued 17, CCs 11, COs 3, on-site inspections 41, complaints investigated 4, fire inspections 7, signs removed 11, permit fees 4,473, permit additional fees 133, fees for municipal searches 51, and planning board projects open year-to-date are 5, and zoning board are 2, so it's getting a little bit better.
It is.
Right, so. The senior advisory committee, I did attend their Halloween party, and it was pretty fun because they actually did a trivia. So I think Valerie really does keep them occupied, and they seem very happy. The senior advisory committee isn't really going to meet too much between now and the spring because of the snowbirds. And but we will be working on the seniors have talent, and I think they have a holiday party in December. And I don't have anything on insurance, and Kovac is kind of on its own.
Okay. We are just on insurance, as you know, we are seeking quotes for the workers' comp, which the new policy will start in January. So we're waiting to get back a couple proposals on that. Michael?
The CCAC did not meet last week, so there's nothing to report there, and nothing on wiring cable.
Okay. Peter?
For the police department for October 2017, there were 848 calls for service, 49 motor vehicle accidents reported, 28 alarms, that's residential and business combined, 29 ambulance requests, 24 animal complaints, 12 disabled vehicles, 28 suspicious vehicle or persons, and 21 assists of other agencies. That's all they have statistically, there's nothing else to report. From sewer department for October 2017 for Firthcliffe, routine maintenance, and on top of that, happy to report everything was in permit limits this time. For Shore Road for October, Kim, I just wanted to note that they're doing markouts throughout the Beaver Dam sewer district on top of their routine maintenance, and also all parameters were within permit limits. And for recreation, on November 16th, there's a Sands Casino trip, $34 per person. There's no information on when people should start registering, but it's getting close, obviously. The holiday concert at West Point's December 3rd. That's $8 per Cornwall resident, and it says also non-resident. Registration begin November 22nd, and on December 5th is a New York City day trip, which is $35 per person, and that is transportation only. And that's all I have from recreation.
Thank you. Gary?
Highway Department last month, as always, assisted the sanitation department. They were busy most of the month cleaning and clearing drainage areas in anticipation of the winter weather. And they have been modifying the plows and the trucks and the loaders for in anticipation of snow removal. The Comprehensive Plan Committee, after the initial burst of responses to the online questionnaire, which is on the town website, things slowed down quite a bit, 2 or 3 a day. But after the article in the Cornwall Local last week, we had a bump, and we are currently just above 175 respondents to the survey, which is a little bit anemic given our population, but it will be on the town website up to the end of the year. And we urge all residents, if they have not done so yet, please respond to the online survey. We need your input. It will be very helpful to the committee's work. That's all I know.
Okay, I just want to mention the Economic Development Advisory. I think right now the focus is going to be on fine-tuning the plan that was presented by the professional planner that we had retained, so hopefully we'll have more information in the next month or so on that. So we have warrant number 11. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Move second, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes, motion is carried. Public comment on anything?
Is this where we ask questions?
Yes, absolutely. What's your name?
My name is Lisa Dudman. I'm sorry, this is my first meeting here, and thank you for having me. There's been a lot of communication on our town website, I would say, Living in Cornwall or whatever, about this may be old news, so bear with me. I'm just trying to get some information
Sure.
about this, but to kind of understand myself about, my understanding is that the Curious Joel community has bought some property and they've gained water rights to the town of Cornwall's water. And they're gonna, it's my understanding, and it could be wrong, that they're gonna be taking out about 600,000 gallons a month when it's in place.
A day.
A day, oh, well, light bulb.
Multiply it times
And I was just wondering a couple of things about this. As this
progresses and is underway, if it isn't already, how is this going to be impacting our community, our resources, our taxes, our water resources, our water costs? Is the Curious Stroll community going to be paying taxes? Because it's my understanding that they have their own infrastructure, with their own town. It's hard for me to explain, but I do know religiously they have their own infrastructure and their own police and everything, how they do things. Okay, so my other questions are, how are we going to ensure that when they tap into the water, the integrity of what they put into our water system is kept in place today, going forward, regulation-wise? Who's gonna take care of that in our community?
Well, let me just try to answer a few of the questions for you. You know, the property that they developed their wells on is on 32, the very southern part of the town, at the Woodbury line. It's actually in what's referred to as the Woodbury Aquifer.
Okay.
Okay? The village, right now, the village water supply consists of 3. It's got the mountains, the reservoirs up in the Black Rock Forest. It has the aqueduct tap out on Palomino Drive, and it has the well fields on Taylor Road. The well fields on Taylor Road are, I'm going to say, it's probably a good 2 miles from the KJ well site, on the south end, but it's also in a different aquifer. Now, I can't tell you that there's not some interconnection between the Moodna aquifer and the Woodbury aquifer. They are separated, but who knows? Underneath there may be some connection, but the water supply is from the Moodna aquifer. So KJ is not putting anything into the water system. They're taking the water out of the ground.
Okay.
Okay, and using their pipeline, which is about halfway that they constructed, they came as far as the Mountainville well site, and right now they supposedly have plans to go the rest of the way to make the aqueduct tap. So they'll be drawing from the well field there, putting it into their pipeline, and then sending it down to the village of Carious Joel. The one thing that the town board has done, we've worked on this, put a lot of time in working with the village of Cornwall Hudson, the town of Woodbury, and village of Woodbury, and we've retained an engineering firm, and we are monitoring the Woodbury stream and also, I think, 3 private wells. So we're hoping that when they turn on the spigot and start drawing water from the well, which supposedly, I don't think they've done yet, they said probably it was going to be a month or so. But we do have monitoring in place where we're hoping that if there's any drawdown, any adverse impacts, we'll be able to pick those up in the monitoring. We have a pretty sophisticated system.
Okay.
The other thing, just so there's clarity, and I guess you could correct me if I'm not, but in New York State, basically they say that the state owns all the groundwater. It's not individual property owners. And because the state says they own all the underground water, through the DEC, that's where the regulations are, and that's why everybody has to go to the DEC for their permit. The town of Cornwall does not control, none of the municipalities control that.
Okay.
So the fact is they bought that property. Initially, from what I can read, I think on some of the filings that they've made, they bought it to serve sort of as a dual purpose. I think one was to use that as a construction site because it was halfway for the pipeline, and I think they were going to put a pump station there just for the pipeline. And probably within the first year of them owning the property, their engineering firm said, you know, there appears to be an aquifer that goes under this property. So when they bought that property, it was not a well, okay? It wasn't even considered well fields. It was property that had an aquifer, which if you go around Mountainville and all, a good part of Mountainville has an aquifer under it. So there were no wells that were purchased and, you know, no wells that were sold. It was strictly they bought the property, and then, like I said, within a year, they realized that there was maybe a good supply of water there. We are concerned about it. We've gone to court over it. We lost the initial court ruling. We appealed it. We did obtain an injunction that prevented them from drawing any water from that until the appeal was heard. We were not successful with the appeal. So now they have the green light to go ahead and develop the wells and start, not develop the wells, but start drawing from the wells. The one flaw, well, there's a lot of flaws in the DEC process with this thing. But the one thing that we find that's of great concern is if we do find that that drawdown of 600,000 gallons a day has an adverse effect on the Woodbury stream or on wells in the area, basically in DEC's permit that they issued, they said that Carious Joe will have to address, those problems that have arisen with it. So, we are going to monitor it. If we see anything that, is really is an adverse impact, we will take the proper steps and go to the proper authorities to try to be heard again to mitigate any, any impacts that it's really going to have on the community.
Is there anything that the community should be doing, helping to, I was told that maybe I should ask the town's lawyer about this. Is there anything as a community we can do to help?
There really isn't. I would say that people who have wells in the area, if they notice any real difference in their wells, if they, and the wells are pretty tricky. You talk about water pressure and all. A lot of times the water pressure depends on your storage tank and how much pressure is in it. But if they really find that they're having any kind of a problem with the well that they didn't have before, then they should bring it to the town's attention, okay, so that we can follow up on it. Peter?
I've said in the past that people should be monitoring their wells.
Yeah.
Because you have to document, if you're going to claim that you've lost something, you have to prove that you had it in the first place.
Right.
So if you don't document the flow that you have now, when you claim that your well is now producing less, how can you prove that? So unless you have some documentation, you should have started earlier, but if you start today, you can say that this is the normal flow. The longer the period of time, the more documentation you have. And if you don't have that documentation, when you go to court, their argument will be, how can you prove you had it in the first place?
You can't prove anything with nothing.
So documentation would be, if I had a well in that area, I would have started documenting it much earlier than this. Because
Yeah.
we're documenting the Woodbury stream, but the private property owners should be documenting what they have.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, Nancy? Virginia?
I just want to, first of all, I want to make a comment that I do appreciate the fact that you're actually looking at a county plan to perhaps to look at taking over the assessment practices. I just want to confirm something. Did the village file a lawsuit against the town because the assessed value in the village on the, I guess, the water district tripled?
Yeah, and basically, I'll tell you, because obviously it is litigation. But, what happened was and it's not the entire district, it's the filtration plant out on Palomino.
Okay.
It was assessed for about 2.2 million under the previous assessment. And the village received, with every other property owner on the reval, the beginning of March, they received the letter and the notice that said your assessment was, and your new assessment will be. And it went up from 2.2 to just a little over $3 million. And then I can't tell you what happened between then and taxable status, which was the tentative roll came out May 1st and all. But the assessor gathered information and he adjusted the assessment to the 6.6 million. So, quite honestly, the steps that we've taken is that we allowed, the village now has gotten a notice, and our attorney that advises us on assessing issues, they had recommended that we have the grievance board sit to give the village an opportunity to make a presentation as they would have in the spring, because they missed that opportunity because they didn't have the notice of the second increase. And that's really where it's at. So, beyond that, I'm hopeful that the town and the village will be able to resolve this and, really, I guess the whole purpose of the roll is fair and equitable, and that applies to the village properties as well. We want to be fair and make sure that it's equitable. And so we're working on moving through this to get it to where it will be fair and going forward, that they'll have the opportunity to, again, address the issue of the assessment. So that's really what it comes. And the village, I just want to say this too, the only reason the village filed the lawsuit is that they were going to be time barred after a certain day.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they did it just under the deadline of a day or two or something. That's why they filed it, because we have been talking about this for the past few weeks with the
Was there a
village.
reason that they didn't get the same as we do? I mean, you get what your, you know, what your new assessment is.
Well, they did
And then
get.
you have the right to grieve, how come they didn't
Right,
get the
well,
same
because they
thing?
did get the initial notice, like all the other property owners did at the beginning of March, and they didn't want to grieve the $3 million. But then when
Because
they,
that's what they thought it was.
that's what they thought it was going to be.
And then it changed.
They did, right, right.
Okay, I
Then it changed. So that's the reason for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Nancy?
Well, thank you, Virginia, for that introduction, because, and I didn't come here to speak tonight, but the whole thing with the town assessor is shameful. It's just absolutely shameful at this point. And I would encourage this board to either replace the current assessor before, I know his contract has another year on his contract, or whatever it is, 2 years or whatever it is. There have been so many things that have gone on to village and town residents, and now the village of Cornwall and Hudson, which now all of a sudden they got their bill, which is, 100% more than what they were originally told. Shame on that assessor, and shame on this town board for allowing him to continue to do business the way he does it. Because the village is not the only person that has been subjected to really unjust practices. And the fact that this man is allowed to continue to do this is really unacceptable at this point. And I would encourage this board to look at what he is doing, really scrutinize his work, and maybe it's time for him to retire. Whether you replace him with another assessor or go to the county, or whatever the board wants to do is fine with me. But this man, it's time for him to go.
Thank you, Nancy. Anyone else?
Oh.
Ken?
Could you tell me how much money is in that Sandsring Cemetery Trust Fund?
It's approximately three, can you give an exact amount?
I don't know the exact amount.
It's right at about $300,000. So it's a significant fund, and, obviously, we'd be very conservative in the use of it to, hopefully it'll last for many, many years. But I think restoring the cemetery and getting it up is going to be a great first step for it. Anyone else?
Will
No?
we be able to tax Jerry Stoll like we're taxing?
Yes. Okay, motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Bunt?
Yes.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yes.
Mr. Randazzo?
Yes. Motion. Thank you all for coming, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Your families. Thank you.
Yeah, we can only assess the parcel off the state right away.